Hello, welcome to a series that I'm going to title Treasures at the Retro Game Vault, where we look at treasures at the Retro Game Vault. So what do I have for you today? I have this. This is the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask Not For Resale cartridge, specifically the gold version of it. Now what is this? This is the Not For Resale version of Majora's Mask that was a lot more published, if that makes sense. So there are levels to Not For Resale cartridges, and I'll go over them in a little bit here. But in general, this version with the Not For Resale stamp in the gold cartridge is about 3 to 5 times more rare than the regular gold version of Majora's Mask, or the holographic collector's version of Majora's Mask. Now, for a second, I'm just going to touch on Not For Resale cartridges in general, because Not For Resale can mean a lot of things. In the case of, like, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, you'll see a ton of Not For Resale cartridges, because that stamp, all that means is that this game was to be sold in a bundle with something else. Like, for instance, a Sega Genesis. So a lot of copies of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 will say Not For Resale to sort of show you that this game was at one point, primary retail. It was to be bundled with the Genesis console, and that's it. I believe it was used to prevent primary retailers from separating bundles and selling them separately for more money, because with the bundle price they usually threw in a game for free, and some retailers knew that you could separate it and make more money that way. But if it's stamped Not For Resale, that is to prevent that. At least that's some theories that I hear. Another example of Not For Resales that you'll see a lot of the time is the Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. When those came out, once again, primary retail, they had big cardboard boxes that had the game itself, with the manuals, the hard plastic case, but it also had the Pokewalker, the extra Pokewalker back, all in this big cardboard box. Now, the big cardboard box had just a perfectly normal SKU number, and the actual internal small plastic case will all be stamped Not For Resale, because at primary retail, you are entitled to the whole box and not just the small case. Does that make sense? Now, one other example that I'll go over is one that you've previously seen in this channel last year or so, when we did RGV After Hours episode 0, and that was the Ocarina of Time 3DS, basically the demo cart, right? Where that one was stamped with Not For Resale, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. Now, where does this lay on that list? Well, this is a final build. This has no demo content, no bait, anything like that, no assets that were removed. Like you'll see really quickly in the future, this is essentially a version that was put in kiosks like Toys R Us, Walmart, Game Crazy, stuff like that, so that you could play the game ahead of time. It's not a demo, it is the full game, and it's very, very hard to tell outside of this little bar here that there's any differences between this and the main game. Now, that's fine, It's still rare because it was a kiosk version, but it's not going to be like the Ocarina of Time 3D I mentioned previously that was very much a demo. This is not a demo. So if you're looking for content that's not available in the base game, this is not what you're looking for. Now, another thing you'll almost immediately notice when looking at this is there's some damage to the actual plastic here, right? Unfortunately, I don't know if it was just the blends that they used, but the gold versions of N64 cartridges, the plastic is incredibly brittle, incredibly so. So much that, look at this other copy I have. This is just a regular Majora's Mask that at one point somebody who brought it into me told me that they dropped it, and it pretty much just exploded. Like, the whole corner there is blown up, and you'll even see it suffers from the same thing that happens a lot of times with N64 cartridges, but especially with the gold ones. You have the two little locking chips that keep the back on flat. That one's there, that one's not. That is just unfortunately how things work with gold cartridges. They're so brittle, it's almost ridiculous. Now, I'm going to open these two up and show you, like I mentioned before, these are almost identical. The actual color of the board is slightly different, but I think that was a manufacturing thing. From factory to factory, you can only have so much uniformity between the two, but you'll notice the boards look exactly the same, the chips look exactly the same. Like I mentioned before, this is essentially a full retail build of Majora's Mask, stamped with Not For Resale. Now, I'm going to distinctly bring up the fact that this is the Not For Resale gold cart, because there is a pretty dramatic difference between the gold cart and the gray cart, where this one is essentially final build. The gray cart is not. The gray cart is more of what I was talking about before when I was talking about demo content. Stuff that is different from the final build. This stuff is not in the final build. There are changes. That is what you get with the gray cartridge, which was a completely different ball game than a kiosk demo. It was more of a trade show demo, if that makes sense. Now, that being said, this guy is still pretty freaking cool. This is the only one I've ever had my hands on, and it's unfortunate about the damage on the cartridge, but I've seen ones in far worse condition. I've seen ones in far better condition. It's just how the dice rolls. Now, that being said, this is something, if you're like a Zelda freak, that sounds rude. I shouldn't say Zelda freak. If you are a Zelda aficionado, really interested in the history behind things, especially about Majora's Mask, then this is the ideal item to get for your collection, because it's guilt-free playing of something that's not available to the generalized public. Now, is this something that you buy as an investment piece? I don't know. Not For Resale cartridges are completely random. Some of them are worth a lot, some of them are worth almost nothing. Even the kiosk demo stuff, some can be worth dramatically more than others. So, for something like this, use your best judgment, as you should with everything. And that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully I'll see you in the next episode, and maybe, heaven forbid, another episode of RGV After Hours here soon. We'll find out. You have a wonderful night, and hope to see you soon.